love the word confident. You know, there's another English word that's really, really similar. Just change a couple letters. Confide. Right? Confident, confide. Ever thought about that? That's really the root of these words? That in order to build trust for confidence, you have to confide in someone else? My wife and I are a big fan of the show Survivor. Right? Yeah, love Survivor. Right? Survivor's a blast to watch. And you know that if you've watched that show, whenever they're trying to make alliances to get to the end of the game to win $1 million and survive, you have to be vulnerable and honest. You have to reveal who you are to that person in order to get them to trust you. Now, some people do it as a lie, as a cover, but usually they tell intimate details about themselves. Well, I did this in my life, or I had this going on, and that brings people together. You ever notice that? This is in all of life. If you want someone to have a deeper relationship with you, you got to be honest and share who you are. You got to be vulnerable. You got to say, this is what I feel. This is what I've gone through. You got to tell personal stories. You got to reveal the hardship that's taken place in your life. And when you do that, you have a confidant. You have someone who you can tell, and you build trust in that relationship. That's the idea of this word, confident. In spite of this, I shall be confident. Literally, the word is translated as to confide in. Being honest and sharing things creates trust. It creates confidence. The question is, who does David confide in to gain this confidence? Well, it's obvious. You can read the rest of the chapter and you're going to see he confides in God. He confides in the Lord. His confidence is in the one who saves him, the one who defends him, the one who trips up his enemies, the one who makes it so that he doesn't have to fear. God is the one who provides the confidence for David. And in order for David to have increased confidence, he has to have an increased trust and confiding in God. And so I usually say this: build confidence with God by being honest with God, by opening up, by being vulnerable, by prayer, by reading God's word. I don't know how many times in my life, but it's happened numerous times where I have felt like God wasn't necessarily for me. Right? That it was almost as if God was trying to trip me up instead of tripping up my enemies. And what was really at the heart of the problem was I was not developing that confidence, that trust relationship. I wasn't being vulnerable with God. Anybody ever been angry at God? I'm going to raise a couple hands here. Yeah. It's okay. I know we're in church. You're not going to get struck down. I promise you. If you've been angry at God, that's okay, because guess what? There's numerous people who have been angered at God, David being one of them. And usually after his anger, he would always come at the end and say, but not my will. Right? I understand, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, and yet he would tell God, I know that I'm not the one in control. Job is another one who was angered at God and yet did not sin. Right? He wouldn't go to the extreme of blaspheming God, even though his friend said, you ought to just curse him and die. Go ahead, get that lightning bolt going, struck down. We need to be vulnerable with God. We need to express to God how we feel. Guess what? God already knows, but just because he knows doesn't mean that you shouldn't tell him. I come across some people every now and then who are like that in relationships. The husband says, well, I don't need to tell my wife I love her. I told her when I married her that I love her. She should just remember it from now on. Like, it doesn't matter if she knows it. You need to tell her every now and then, right? God's the same way. He knows your heart, but guess what? You need to share it with him every now and then. You need to be vulnerable and let God know what's going on inside of you. Have you been angry at your circumstances or the struggles that you're going through or the hardships that you're dealing with? Let God know. Be open. Be honest. It builds trust and confidence. Because when we share with God who we are, as human beings, when we share our hearts, when we let him know everything about us, when we say, this is my sin, this is my struggle, this is what I've been dealing with, this is what I can't overcome, this is what I'm frustrated with, this is what I'm joyous about. Not just the bad things, the good things as well. God, thank you for doing this in my life.